In the silvery rays of moonlight framing the dark contours of the nighttime city, Monica stood face to face with a man whose eyes reflected genuine surprise and bewilderment. He, with confidence in his voice and a slight smile on his lips, tried to convince her that there had been a misunderstanding between them. He was not who Monica thought he was. There was insistence in his words, but also a note of respect for the girl in front of him. Doubting his words, she gazed into his face, trying to discern his true intentions. Monica's thoughts were distracted by the memory of the day she first met Garcia. That day was vivid and unforgettable in her memory, for then she had made the mistake of mistaking him for another man, for Luis. This case seemed no different from the current one, and Monica decided to test her interlocutor by addressing him by the name that first came to her mind, Luis. Her voice sounded confident, and she gazed into his reaction, expecting to see a familiar expression on his face. However, the man in front of her was undaunted and easily parried her attempt, introducing himself as Enrique Soliven. There was a quiet laugh in his voice and a spark of amusement in his eyes, as if he were glad of this guessing game he and Monica had so unexpectedly been drawn into. The name sounded new to Monica, and she froze for a moment, trying to figure out if the person standing in front of her was really a different person or another mystery to be solved. In front of Monica stood a man whose facial features were so similar to those of two other men she had met recently that she couldn't escape the feeling of déjà vu. This uncanny similarity boggled the mind and raised doubts about her own perception of reality. Monica, flustered and with a certain amount of stubbornness, told Enrique that he was lying, trying to convince him that he couldn't be someone else. At that moment, as emotions ran high and the tension became palpable, Monica noticed a small, barely noticeable scar under Enrique's eye. That scar, like a clue, made Enrique suddenly turn away and start walking away, eager to avoid further questions. His hasty retreat only added fuel to the fire of her wariness and determination to get to the truth. Monica, seized with a mixture of surprise and possible understanding of the situation, stopped him with a suggestion that sounded almost like a fantasy plot from a book. They could be triplets. This suggestion of three identical brothers separated by circumstance seemed unbelievable, but the scars, identical on all three, seemed to confirm her words. This detail seemed to connect them by an invisible thread, suggesting a shared history or event that had left identical marks on their faces. Monica, standing on the threshold of unraveling, felt excitement rising in her chest at the thought that a story worthy of the most exciting novel might unfold before her. Monica wondered if the man in front of her was either lying or the situation was much more serious, and this Luis Enrique Garcia had multiple identity disorder. In the heart of Monica, who grew up within the walls of a humble orphanage, lived a hope and a secret dream, ignited by the words of the principal of this institution. The principal, a woman of wisdom and kindness, once told her that the name Monica had not been chosen by chance. It belonged to a famous princess whose exploits and nobility remained in people's memory for many years. The story had an inspiring effect on Monica, instilling in her the idea that despite her humble origins, she was capable of great things and could make a mark on history. However, despite the nobility of the name, Monica's last name was simple and inconspicuous, orphan. This surname was a common denominator for all the children of the orphanage, stripped of family ties and the past. The name hid the sad reality of their existence. They were orphans whose past lives had been erased and whose future seemed uncertain. Orphan became a symbol of loss and hope at the same time, for every child who bore this surname dreamed of the day when he or she would be welcomed into a new family and given a new life along with a new surname. Monica had always carried the heavy stigma of loneliness without the warmth of a family home behind her. She had lived her entire life without foster parents, which left her with the title of Miss Orphan forever, like a seal of fate imprinted on her heart. On this day, sitting in a half-empty cafe, she was immersed in her thoughts, remembering the path that had brought her here, to this foreign city where every corner seemed unfamiliar and hostile to her. Her train of thought was suddenly interrupted by the voice of the interviewer, who, like a dagger through the silence, shouted her last name. The sound made Monica flinch, and her heart began to race. She felt the stares of those around her in the cafe, each one seeming to pierce through her. In that moment, her last name became not just a word, but a label, exposing her to everyone as an orphan, left to fend for herself by the world. Embarrassment overwhelmed Monica, making her blush and lower her eyes in apology to the woman who had violated her privacy. "I apologize, I'm not used to the atmosphere here yet," Monica apologized, feeling her voice shake with nervous tension. Madame Olin, the head maid at the house where Monica arrived for the interview, was sympathetic to her words. "It's perfectly normal when you move to a new city. We have all experienced similar things at some point," Madame Olin said softly, trying to be supportive of Monica. Her words sounded like a balm to the soul, reminding Monica that even in the most difficult moments, there are people who are ready to lend a helping hand and support. In the heart of Monica, a young and determined girl, burned an unquenchable flame of confidence and a desire to do good. Her recounting of the past before Madame Olin was filled with stories of her service as a nurse during the war, a service that tested her strength, endurance, and dedication. Olin, for her part, made no secret of her admiration for these qualities of Monique, noting her diligence and dedication. However, as gratifying as the praise was, Monica wasn't looking for words of approval, but a real opportunity to put her skills into practice, eager to find a job where she could be useful. 4 years ago, as the world was caught in the fire of a 2-year conflict, Monica stood on the threshold of adulthood, eagerly awaiting her coming of age in 2 months. The moment she saw a recruitment ad for nurses with the promise of benefits for university admission, her heart was ignited with the desire to embark on a path of service and help. This decision was not a spontaneous impulse. It was a deliberate and conscious step into a future where she could apply her strengths for the benefit of others, proving to herself and the world that even in the darkest of times it is possible to find the light of hope and humanity. Fate, capricious and unpredictable, did not shower Monica with generous gifts after the war. The kingdom to which she had given her strength and skills was defeated, leaving her without the promised salary and shattering her dreams for the future. The university, whose gates Monica was about to step through, now lay in ruins, a symbol of broken hopes and lost opportunities. These hard times had left a mark on her heart, but they had not broken her spirit. Like a phoenix rising from the ashes, new hope has been ignited in Monica's life, thanks to an unexpected offer from Diane, her old friend and fellow military nurse. Diana, who also went through the fire of war and experienced its cruelty, has not forgotten the friendship and mutual help that bound them together in those difficult days. She reached out to Monica, inviting her to tutor aristocratic children. The offer was not just a chance for a new job, but an opportunity to find herself again, to rebuild her life on new ground. Madame Olin, an imposing and authoritative figure in the house where Monica hoped to begin a new page in her life, decided affirmatively that tomorrow Monica would be presented to the head of the family. It promised to be the beginning of her new career, a new phase in her life filled with promise and opportunity. However, Madame Olin's penetrating gaze, accustomed to reading people like an open book, lingered on Monica, and suddenly she asked a question that took the girl by surprise, about her marital status, or rather, whether Monica was an orphan. Monique's silent but telling nod was an answer that changed Madame Olin's attitude toward her in an instant. Pity gleamed in Madame's eyes. This sudden burst of sympathy for her plight was almost palpable. Monica felt gazes filled with regret and sadness envelop her like a warm but uncomfortable blanket. This pity, though sincere, gave Monica mixed feelings. On the one hand, she appreciated the sympathy shown to her. On the other hand, her pride and desire for independence were put to the test. She reflected that she didn't want to be an object of pity, didn't want to be seen through the prism of her loss and hardship. She realized that she could have avoided this by becoming part of a respected family, by accepting the offer of adoption she had once rejected. This choice she had made earlier was driven by a desire to maintain her independence, a desire to prove to herself and the world that she could make her own way on her own, without the patronage and support of a powerful family. At 12, Monica was too good-natured, and this was the cause of her greatest downfall, which had been tearing at her heart for 10 years. 10 years ago, within the cozy but worn walls of an orphanage, Monica became a heavenly messenger to the many little souls that were there with her. There wasn't a task she couldn't handle, helping other children overcome learning difficulties, whether it was confusing math examples or obscure grammar rules. Her patience and ability to explain complex things in simple terms made her not only a friend, but a teacher to many. At this time, the adults responsible for the order and well-being of the orphanage could not help but notice the light that Monica radiated. Gathered in their small, cozy meeting room, the educators exchanged opinions about the girl, unanimously recognizing her intelligence and concern for others. There was a note of admiration and warmth in their voices as they talked about Monica, hoping that sponsors would soon arrive who would see her as not just another child in need of a home and family, but a true treasure who deserved a better share. Sponsors, these patrons of fate, whose decisions could change the lives of children as if by magic, chose for themselves wards from among the residents of the orphanage. More often than not, their eyes rested on the very young, for babies and toddlers seemed to them the most suitable to start a new life in a new family. Monica's age, unfortunately, put her at a disadvantage in this unannounced race for a chance at a happy future. But despite the burden of understanding this bitter reality, there was hope in her heart. Hope that one day there would be people who could see beyond her mature for her age gaze to the spark that could light their home. One ordinary day, as the sun broke lazily through the old, dusty windows of the orphanage, a scene unfolded that foreshadowed a significant change in Monica's life. In the midst of the quiet corridors, filled with whispering children and creaking floorboards, one of the sponsors approached the director of the orphanage. With seriousness and openness, marked by a tone of deep personal pain, he shared his story. 12 years ago, grief was forever imprinted on his family for the loss of a child, a little soul they never got to welcome into the world. This loss left a void in their hearts, and ever since then, they have dreamed of filling it by welcoming a girl into their family whose age would match what their daughter would be now. The description of the child they were looking for seemed to be drawn from Monica's portrait, a girl whose age, personality traits, and even looks seemed to fit perfectly into the image they had carried in their hearts all these years. The principal, who had met many children and sponsors along the way, instantly realized that she was facing a unique chance to connect broken destinies. She did not hesitate to assure the sponsor that Monica was the perfect match for their family, as if fate itself had directed their steps to this girl. Lizzie, one of the girls of the orphanage who had overheard this dialogue and who was filled with a sense of sadness and regret at the imminent parting, hurried to share what she had heard with Monica. Her words sounded not only excitement for her friend, but also quiet envy at such an unexpected turn of fate. When Monica heard the news, she was caught in a whirlwind of contradictory feelings. On the one hand, the joy and excitement of realizing that her dream of having a family could become a reality was mixed with anxiety and uncertainty in the face of such a sudden change in her life. A few days after the waves of fate began their unpredictable motion, a scene filled with emotion and drama unfolded in one of the quiet rooms of the orphanage. Lizzie, a girl with eyes glistening with tears, found refuge in Monica's presence. Despair and hope mingled in her soul as she took the liberty of kneeling before Monica. Lizzie's heart was full of longing for what seemed like an unattainable dream. The family, love, and care she had sought for so long within the walls of this orphanage. The moment Lizzie begged Monica to concede her chance at a new life, the air filled with heaviness. Monica, deep in thought, felt the weight of making a decision that could change not only her fate, but that of her friend. Lizzie, in the heat of desperation, proposed a plan that seemed audacious and reckless at the same time. She asked Monica to divert the principal's attention only for a moment so that she herself could get into the carriage intended for Monica and thus take her place in the sponsoring family. In exchange for this gesture of self-sacrifice, Lizzie offered Monica a brooch, not just a piece of jewelry, but a symbol of promise and gratitude. The brooch may have been one of the few valuable things Lizzie had to offer, but its true value lay not in the material, but in the mark of the deep personal appreciation and bond it created between the two girls. This brooch was discovered in little Lizzie's cradle that winter evening when she was left on the doorstep of the orphanage. Despite its apparent simplicity and the possibility that the brooch was only a beautiful fake, it was something much more to the children who inhabited the house. Their imaginations were enlivened every time the rays of sunlight breaking through the window panes found this object, coloring it with pink sparkles, reminding them of the magic that seemed to be forgotten by the adults. Monica was especially drawn to this symbol of hope and beauty. Her dreams and aspirations wove around this brooch like a creeper around an ancient column. She envisioned one day owning it, but that coveted moment was overshadowed by the hard choices facing her. And now, in the face of fate, Monica wondered if it was worth it to sacrifice a chance at a real home and family warmth for the sake of owning a piece of metal and glass, even if it seemed like the universe to her. Lizzie complained that her reproaches and resentment from her caretakers had become her daily reality, while Monica seemed to possess an invisible shield that reflected all adversity. With bitterness in her voice, Lizzie expressed her conviction that all doors to a possible future outside the walls of the orphanage were closed before her. Her words were full of hopelessness, because in her mind, Monica, thanks to her popularity among the tutors and other children, had every chance to create a new life in a foster family, unlike herself. Monica, for her part, pondered Lizzie's words. Deep down, she knew that her chances of adoption were indeed higher, but could she leave Lizzie in this position? Reflection led her to a decision that required giving up her own dreams for the sake of friendship and compassion. Monica realized that the true meaning of family and home is not just about having a roof over your head and people who love you, but the ability to sacrifice yourself for the good of others. With this epiphany, Monica agreed to sacrifice her prospects so that Lizzie would have a chance at a new life. At the dawn of a new day, as the first rays of sunlight cautiously made their way through the cracks of the orphanage's ancient windows, Monica found herself reflecting on what had happened. She held the brooch, a symbol of her sacrificial decision, but the feelings the trinket had once evoked in her seemed lost. After looking around the room, her gaze drifted to the window where the palette of morning colors played, but emptiness enveloped her soul. At this time, the principal of the orphanage, a woman with a determined look and an unwavering sense of duty, was urgently looking for Monica, who should have been out by now. Her attention was completely absorbed in preparing for the big moment, sending one of the wards to a new family. Suddenly, Lizzie appeared beside her, taking Monica's place very confidently, as if it was meant to be. In the hurry and chaos of the morning rush, the principal didn't notice as she shoved Lizzie into the carriage meant for Monica. The mistake was realized too late, when the carriage had already left the orphanage. When the principal found out what had happened, her anger knew no bounds. She found Monica, and with a flash of indignation unleashed a wave of reproaches upon her for the deed she had done. As a punishment, Monica was forbidden to leave her room, eliminating any chance of future adoption. This act not only cemented Monica's status as an unwanted child in the eyes of potential adoptive parents, but also left her within the walls of the shelter indefinitely. Lizzie, on the other hand, did not return to the orphanage, heading for the new life she had dreamed of but never admitted to. Fate had put everyone in their place, leaving Monica to ponder the consequences of her choices in the loneliness of her room. Immersed in thinking about her long-ago decisions and consequences, Monica couldn't escape the thought that Lizzie had outmaneuvered her by stealth, though she had never before considered such things as experience and calculation. Now, standing on the threshold of a new chapter of her life, she realized that new opportunities were opening up before her. Tomorrow she was to take on the role of tutor, helping the aristocrat's son on his educational journey. This boy, though described as someone suffering from weakness from a very early age, needed her care and support. She was promised generous pay for the job, which was certainly an attractive proposition for anyone, especially someone who came out of an orphanage with no clear direction in life. However, deep down, Monica felt a strange longing for the past, despite all its difficulties. These feelings suddenly led her to the wrong place she had originally intended to go. Instead of returning to the hotel where she was temporarily staying, the harbor sidewalk was suddenly under her feet. When Monica looked around and saw the expanse of water before her, shrouded in the mist of early morning, and the ships bobbing on the waves, she realized her mistake. This unexpected turn made her think about how easy it is to stray from your chosen path, even when it seems like you know exactly where you're going. Monica, finding herself on the crowded docks of the local harbor, decided to ask the workers for help to find the direction she needed. Instead of the expected support and encouragement, however, she encountered a grudging pushback that made her heart sink for a moment in surprise and disappointment. Trying to keep her composure, Monica took a deep breath, trying to chase away the pent-up feeling of helplessness. She couldn't let this moment break her resolve and began to slowly but purposefully wander the expanse of the harbor, hoping to find a clue to her next move. As she passed the bustling groups of workers, the piles of cargo, and the bustle of port life, her gaze happened to catch the outline of a clock tower in the distance, rising above the sea horizon like a beacon for lost travelers. This discovery seemed to awaken a new energy in her, and with confidence in her heart, she directed her steps towards this symbol of hope, expecting to find answers there. However, barely had she taken a few steps towards her newfound goal when a sudden and sharp noise behind her made her heart sink in fear. Fear quickly engulfed her, causing her to look around for the source of her fears, already hearing the pounding of her own heart. She had expected to see a threat, but instead her gaze was met by an ordinary man who seemed to be just as suddenly at her side and almost crashed into her with his inattentive step. This moment, though brief, was filled with tension and anticipation, but in the end was resolved only by a slight fright and relief when Monica realized that there was no danger, and in front of her stood only an ordinary passerby, absorbed in his thoughts and affairs, like all of them in this bustling world of port bustle. After an unexpected encounter, the man in front of Monica addressed her with concern, inquiring about her well-being after their unfortunate encounter. But Monica, instead of answering, could not take her eyes off his face, for in this man she recognized Saul, the same man she had met years ago in a completely different place and circumstances. Her mind was instantly transported back in time to the days when she had cared for him in the hospital, where he was in critical condition. She remembered how he had been brought in, barely breathing and exhausted, unable to give even his name. All information about him was a mystery, except for the worn medallion around his neck, on which only 3 letters remained engraved: Soul. That name was the only thread that connected him to the outside world during those dark days. Monica, thinking back to those times, felt sadness that someone as beautiful as Saul had to experience so much pain and suffering. Her heart clenched at the thought of the months he had spent in a deep coma, fighting for every breath, while she, powerless, watched his struggle, holding his hand and prayerfully hoping for a miracle. At the moment when hope for Saul's recovery seemed lost, when the doctors, with heavy hearts, recognized their powerlessness before his condition, the unbelievable happened. He suddenly opened his eyes, as if against all predictions and expectations. This miraculous awakening brought a ray of light into the atmosphere of despair and hopelessness that prevailed in the hospital. However, this joy was quickly overshadowed by the bitter truth of their kingdom's defeat in the war, which added a heaviness to the hearts of all involved in this dark period. After this event, the hospital, previously filled with groans and prayers for healing, began to gradually return to normal life. The nurses who had been keeping their patients up all day and night could finally breathe a sigh of relief, knowing that those for whom they had fought so hard were now out of danger. Amidst this maelstrom of events, Saul disappeared as suddenly as he regained consciousness, leaving the hospital before Monica could notice. Monica, who had been by Saul's side for many months, caring for him and hoping for his recovery, felt deep regret. In addition, she was left with a sense of incompleteness, for she had not even had time to remove all his bandages to see that he was fully healed. Her heart was filled with sadness, not only because of his sudden disappearance, but also because she had never heard a word of thanks, or at least farewell from him, despite all the care and attention she had given him. This unexpected encounter and subsequent exposure added even more questions and mixed feelings for Monica. She was absolutely certain that standing before her was the very man she had nursed in the hospital, whose silent presence had filled many days of her life with expectation and hope. Her confidence was so great that even despite his words and the obvious lack of an eye wound that Saul should have had, she lost the bearings of her perception for a moment. When the man said his name wasn't Saul, and that he didn't know what Monica was talking about, it was a cold shower for her. Her confidence began to seem naive, her hope a mistake. She remembered that she had never seen Saul without bandages, and as it now seemed, her memory of him was built more on internal sensations than concrete visual images. The stranger's blue eyes were a clear sign to her that she was mistaken. That moment of realization brought embarrassment and an apology, which Monica hastily presented, feeling confused. But the man's reaction to her apology was full of understanding and kindness. His words about how there are many people in the world who are alike were said with such sincerity and participation that Monica was a little relieved. This brief but emotion-packed exchange left complicated feelings in Monica's soul. On the one hand, she was relieved that she hadn't insisted on her mistake, but on the other, she felt a new sense of emptiness at the realization that her search for Saul wasn't over yet. A man with a confident and determined look introduced himself as Louis Verfille. This name sounded unexpected to Monica, making her think for a moment and reconsider her initial assumptions about her interlocutor. In that moment, she realized that she may have been wrong in her conclusions about this man. The next seconds were filled with drama and surprise as Luis, acting with incredible speed and determination, he grabbed Monica's arm. With a sharp jerk, he pulled Monica aside, barely avoiding the swiftly rushing carriage that swept past them, leaving only a swirl of dust in its wake. In that brief instant when time seemed to slow its run, Monica found herself in Luis's arms. Her heart, suddenly trapped in an unexpected feeling, hammered in time with the flutter of embarrassment that swept over her at her unexpected intimacy with this man. Luis, realizing the unconventionality of the situation, hurriedly apologized for his abruptness and unorthodox maneuver. However, Monica, coming to her senses after the unexpected rescue, did not make a big deal out of the incident. On the contrary, she sincerely thanked Luis for his timely intervention, which had certainly saved her from a possible tragedy. After an unexpected rescue on the streets of the city, Luis noticed that Monica looked a little confused and lost amongst the streets unknown to her. Finding her confusion, he asked her if she needed help. With ease and without the slightest hint of displeasure, Monica shared that her goal was to find a hotel where she could stay. Luis, showing exceptional gallantry and willingness to help, offered to accompany her to make sure that she reached her destination safely. Without hesitation, he took the weight of her suitcase, as if by this gesture he wanted to lighten her burden not only physically, but also mentally. During their leisurely walk, Luis showed interest in his companion, asking her name. Monica replied with a smile, a sign of their mutual understanding. However, when Luis inquired about her last name, it added a note of formality and mystery to their dialogue, for each name carries a story yet to be revealed. As time went on, Monica felt a slight disappointment that Luis had not revealed the pages of his life to her. He only mentioned that he had come in search of people he knew in the past, leaving the details of his search behind the scenes. It created an aura of mystery and the unknowable around him, which only heightened Monica's interest. In response to her quiet desire to learn more, Luis shared the thought that a tutoring profession would be just right for Monica, emphasizing it with a compliment about her beautiful eyes. This compliment, spoken sincerely and warmly, couldn't help but touch Monica, adding a touch of lightness and mutual admiration to their interaction. Under the influence of Luis's unexpected but exceptionally nice compliment, Monica felt a blush play across her cheeks. Her embarrassment was so obvious and innocent that Luis couldn't resist further words, labeling Monica as the most curious girl he'd ever had the pleasure of meeting. She confessed that her unquenchable curiosity about the capital and all the new things she encounters here is a result of being in such a magnificent and mysterious place for the first time. Luis, understanding her feelings, confirmed that the capital was indeed teeming with wonders and mysteries ready to be revealed to those willing to seek them out. When they came to a spacious square surrounded by stately buildings that seemed to be witnesses to many stories past and present, Monica felt that their journey was coming to an end. With gratitude in her voice, she turned to Luis, expressing her appreciation for his selfless help and company. In that moment, her heart was filled with warm feelings for this man who had come into her life so unexpectedly, and at the same time, she was gripped with the fear that their paths might never cross again. The thought that this day might remain only a vivid but fleeting memory in her life brought a sweet sadness to Monica's heart. In her heart, she hoped that fate would bring them together again, because Luis had left an indelible mark on her heart, awakening feelings she hadn't even known existed. The moment the silence between them became almost palpable, filled with anticipation and indecision, Luis suddenly interrupted her with his unexpected confession. The words about wanting to see each other again sounded like a melody to Monica, which instantly dispelled all her doubts and fears about the future of their acquaintance. Luis's deep gaze, in which sincerity and hope were intertwined, made Monica's heart beat faster. When Luis gently took her hand, the touch caused a wave of warm emotion to spread throughout her body. His lips touching the skin of her arm in a tender kiss made Monica feel like the heroine of a romantic story she could only dream of. Luis's words, full of promise and expectation, in which he admitted that, although he was not the man Monica had originally thought he was, at their next meeting she would be able to get to know him truly, filled the atmosphere between them with a special magic. That moment was a turning point for Monica, when time seemed to stop and the air around them was filled with the invisible energy of shattered possibilities. Now Louis seemed to her no more than a common heartbreaker that would chase every skirt. Luis and Monica exchanged parting words. The atmosphere was filled with a heavy note of goodbye. After their paths parted, Monica walked down the street, deep in thought. Her heart was determined never to see Luis again. This decision felt like a heavy stone lying on her soul, but she was unwavering in her choice. Arriving at the hotel, which for once seemed to be her only refuge from all the storms of the outside world, Monica slowly sank down on the bed. She felt the tension of the day slowly leave her body, allowing her to breathe deeply and calmly. At that moment, her thoughts were solely focused on the upcoming interview, which could be the beginning of a new chapter in her life. At dawn, as the first rays of the sun burned her skin, Monica suffered from the heat that was already beginning to be felt in the air. The anticipation of the day ahead filled her with a mixture of excitement and determination. Pondering her way to the mansion where the interview was to take place, she mentally plotted the route. She was already anticipating the moment when she could spend her first paycheck to buy a hat to protect herself from the scorching sun. And so, while thinking about future purchases, Monica noticed a lady walking by with an umbrella. This simple object seemed to her an oasis in the desert, a symbol of elegance and practicality at the same time. At that moment, she firmly decided that she would purchase not only a hat, but also an umbrella so that she would feel fully prepared for all the vagaries of the weather. The thought brought her a sense of confidence and optimism, for every step she was about to take was for the betterment of her own life. In the spacious and cool halls of the mansion where Monica arrived to begin a new page in her life, she was greeted by Mrs. Nuto Mallet. In this room, where every piece of the interior seemed steeped in history and tradition, Monica felt like she was in another world. Mrs. Mallet, with the grace of a lady of the house, offered Monica iced tea, the perfect beverage to ease the unbearable heat outside the windows. Monica accepted the offer and found that each sip of this tea offered true relief and coolness, as if a soft breeze was splashing an oasis of freshness in the desert of her fatigue. During this refreshing ritual, Mrs. Nuto Mallet shared with Monica the details of her future work. She said that Monica would have to take on the task of educating Martinel, the second son in the family, a boy who was born at a difficult time for the family. Nuto's eyes lit up every time she mentioned Martinel, reflecting all the boundless love and hopes she had for her son. During the conversation, Miss Mallet showed interest in Monica's personal life, asking questions about her past, hobbies, and future plans. When Monica mentioned her age, Mrs. Nuto did not hide her surprise to discover that their new teacher was the same age as her daughter. This fact apparently caused Mrs. Mallet to feel a special sense of sympathy and interest in Monica, for this discovery created an unexpected bond between her and her family, making the atmosphere of their interaction even warmer and more trusting. In the shadow of the grand walls of the Mallet mansion, where every room holds echoes of past generations, lived Liel Mallet, daughter of Mrs. Nuto Mallet. In a time when young girls in her circle were eager to find a spouse before their 20s, the war had altered those plans. But unlike many who saw marriage as the only way, Liel was sincere in her desire to spend her life by her mother's side and not to marry. Monica, struck by the depth of Liella's feeling and affection for her mother, could not conceal her admiration. She frankly confessed that if she had had the opportunity to have a mother like her, she would not have sought marriage either. These words deeply moved Mrs. Nuto Mallet, who was dumbfounded to learn that Monica was an orphan. This moment opened up a new understanding of Monica for Nuto, bringing a wave of sympathy and a desire to support her, for the world Monica had grown up in was so far removed from the warmth and care she had seen in the Mallet house. Monica's gaze was involuntarily caught by the richness and splendor of the interior, which seemed to transport her to another, more luxurious world. Walls adorned with exquisite works of art, furniture that seemed not mere household items but true masterpieces of craftsmanship. All this made her heart beat faster with admiration and secret envy. After all, life here, within these walls, seemed something unattainable and at the same time so desirable. Monica could not deny that if she were in the place of Liella, the owner of this paradise on earth, she would not be in a hurry to exchange her freedom and independence for the dubious joys of marriage. Suddenly, another unexpected feeling gripped Monica's heart when Nuto, the owner of the estate, expressed her sympathy for Monica without any preamble. With warmth in her voice and a sincere look in her eyes, Nuto shared her confidence that Monica has all the necessary qualities to be an excellent mentor for her son. But Nuto's words were not limited to Monica's professional qualities. With unexpected openness, she offered Monica the chance to see her as a mother, giving her the opportunity not just to be a guest at the mansion, but to live here. This proposal sounded like magic, opening doors for Monica to a world she could only dream of before. Now she was facing not only the choice of professional path, but also the opportunity to radically change her life, plunging into the atmosphere of love, care, and, of course, luxury, which was so full of corridors and halls of this magnificent mansion. Once the arrangements were finalized, Nuto readily instructed her faithful maid, Sally, to escort Monica to her new abode on the stately estate. At the same time, the butler, whose manners and actions were a model of true loyalty and professionalism, was instructed to take care of Monica's luggage, carefully transferring it to the designated room. Nuto, running her house with casual grace, emphasized that the remuneration for Monica's labors would amount to 500 sin per week. The sum seemed astronomical to Monica, for even 500 sin a month would have seemed to her a worthy reward for her efforts. With a slight smile and a twinkle in her eyes, Nuto winked at Monica as if sharing a secret wisdom with her, noting that young girls like Monica should have enough money to live a full and fulfilling life. These words made Monica think of the new horizons and possibilities that were now opening up before her. She imagined how these generous payments would allow her to become a real rich woman, independent and free, able to satisfy her every wish or whim, from buying exquisite jewelry to traveling to distant and exotic countries. This prospect filled her heart with excitement and joyful anticipation of future adventures and accomplishments that now seemed so close and attainable. Nuto promised to introduce Monica Martinella at the traditional family dinner. The atmosphere of the house was filled with anticipation. However, events unfolded in an unexpected way when Martinelle and Liella suddenly appeared in front of Nuto in the hallway, as if fate had decided to hasten their meeting. Nuto, without getting lost, introduced Monica to her children with an ease and confidence that was all her own, bringing warmth and friendliness to the moment. Monica, finding herself the center of attention, met the gazes of the Nuto children. In that momentary exchange of glances with Liella, Monica felt something extraordinary. Liella had brown hair, a hereditary hue that seemed to have been passed down to her from Nuto, and her appearance was adorned with an exquisite pink dress that emphasized her youthful charm. However, the most startling discovery for Monica was Liella's eyes. Gray, filled with an unfathomable depth and mystery, they were surprisingly familiar to Monica. At the moment when Monica met Lizzie Orphan's eyes, an inexpressible feeling, a mixture of surprise and momentous foreboding, seized her heart. She realized that the link between past and present, between generations, was unexpectedly close. The moment Nuto, with a slight but insistent motion, pushed her son forward, The atmosphere in the room was filled with expectation. The son, obeying his mother's silent command, slowly stepped forward and, with some uncertainty in his voice, called Monica Miss Teacher. This moment seemed like an introduction to a kind of solemn ceremony of acquaintance where every word and every gesture had a special meaning. Following him, Liella, who seemed to be seeing Monica for the first time despite her obvious familiarity with her, introduced herself as if they had never met before. Her voice sounded clear and pure, like dewdrops in the first rays of the morning sun, giving this moment even more significance and weight. Nuto, watching this scene like a director watching his actors, stated with certainty that since Liella and Monica were the same age, they could no doubt become friends. Her words hovered in the air, filling the space with the soft light of possibility and new beginnings. Liella, with a note of agreement in her voice, confirmed these words as if signing an invisible contract of friendship. But Monica, standing opposite, sensed something else. Lielle's gaze, her confident demeanor, all of it made Monica feel threatened, shimmering in the air like a thin, subtle thread. That sense of menace, as subtle and piercing as a cold wind through the curtain of an open window, made Monica wary and watch her new acquaintance closely, trying to unravel the secrets she might be hiding. After the first notes of familiarity were in the air, Nudo, with motherly concern and anticipation of a new relationship, asked the children to escort Monica to her new room. This moment was full of symbolism. A new stage in Monica's life was beginning, and she was taking her first steps towards it accompanied by new acquaintances. Martinel, expressing his bewilderment, emphasized that he didn't know which room they should be led to, given the sheer size of the mansion. This mansion, with its many corridors and halls, seemed like a labyrinth full of mysteries and unexplored corners. However, it soon became clear that Monica would be Martinel's neighbor, which added a note of predetermination and fate to the story. As he led Monica to her new home, Martinel did not miss the opportunity to strike up a conversation. He shared his thoughts on his own age, expressing dissatisfaction with how his appearance, especially in golf shoes, made him appear younger than his 10 years. These words were full of sincerity and a slight sadness about the discrepancy between perception and reality, which made Martinel's image even more vivid and memorable. Monica, for her part, stated with ease and confidence that she thought Martinel was extremely fashionable. This compliment, said with a slight smile, not only lifted Martinel's spirits, but also established a bridge of understanding and sympathy between them. Martinel, a boy with brown hair that playfully cast shadows on his clear face, possessed deep gray eyes capable of reflecting in an instant the storm of emotion or the clear calm of the sky. His smile was so beautiful that it could easily melt the ice in hearts, and his resemblance to Miss Mallet added to his charm. This marvelous mixture of features drew the eye to him, making him a figure not to be forgotten among the inhabitants of the mansion. However, while Martinel embodied a certain harmony and attractiveness, Liella, on the other hand, caused Monica a sense of unease. The feeling had no apparent basis, but it was so strong that it remained in her mind like a heavy stone. Liella walked past them, leaving Monica and Martinel alone, which only added to the feeling of awkwardness and tension. Her figure, slowly receding down the hallway, seemed to fade into the shadows, leaving behind questions and unsolved mysteries. Such a stark contrast in characters, and the atmosphere created around these two characters, couldn't help but leave a mark on Monica's perception. But more importantly, she was exactly like Lizzie. Martinel, with a note of irritation in his voice, pointed to his room, complaining about the lace curtains that hung on the door. He made no secret of his dissatisfaction with this decorative element, considering it overly refined and not in keeping with his tastes. At this moment, Monica, following his gaze, noticed that the door of her future room was dispensed with such decorations, which made her wonder what other differences awaited her in her new abode. When Monica tried to open the door, Liella quickly intervened with a smirk, stating that Monica was actually trying to enter the warehouse, not her room. This momentary and unexpected adjustment to the situation, accompanied by Liella's smirk, added to the moment's irony and unpredictability. Monica, for her part, could not help but notice the lace gloves on Liella's hands, which were an object of admiration and envy among the aristocracy. The presence of such gloves on Liel not only emphasized her high position in society, but also hinted at her sources of wealth and influence, which made her even more mysterious and interesting figure in the eyes of society. These exquisite accessories, symbolizing high status and taste, became even more valuable and rare in the post-war era. Suddenly, with a note of abruptness in her mannerisms, Liella pointed to the door that actually led to Monica's room, making everyone around her freeze in surprise for a moment. Martinel, for his part, could not stay away from the scene and expressed his bewilderment at Liella's behavior, suggesting that she still carried a grudge for the broken watch. He didn't understand why the need to behave so rudely had arisen now, at the appearance of a new face in their company. Liella, as if trying to ease the tension that had been created, hastened to explain her reaction by Monica's unexpected presence, which she said had taken her by surprise. There was a fake attempt at rebuilding trust in her voice when she asked Monica for her last name, as if that might help her better understand and accept her new surroundings. Monica's answer, dubbing her last name Orphan, seemed like a clue to many questions. Realization flashed in Liella's eyes, as if she had connected some important fact or memory with that name. But before she could articulate her thoughts or emotions, the atmosphere was cut by Martinel's sudden shout. Martinel frantically began to protest the maid's decisions. Events unfolded with unexpected speed. His voice, shrill and full of desperation, echoed through the hallways as he begged her to leave his precious toys alone. The maid, however, in spite of his protests, steadfastly held her own, invoking the implacable orders of Madame Nutot, who had apparently decided that the time had come to dispose of Martinel's childish things. Meanwhile, Monica, who had unwittingly witnessed this spectacle, looked in the direction of Liella, but the latter was already crossing the threshold of her personal space, entering Monica's room with the intention of showing her off. Liella, with her characteristic dryness, began to demonstrate Monica's room, but one discovery stunned the young girl far more than the rest. A mirror flaunted majestically in the room, an object of luxury and wonder that Monica hadn't had the opportunity to call her own until that moment. This discovery literally stunned her, causing a flurry of emotions and memories of times when she could only dream of such an object in her immediate surroundings. Suddenly, Liel, disrupting Monica's train of thought, admitted again that she had forgotten her last name, which was not only unexpected, but seemed odd given their shared past. Monica, overwhelmed with a mixture of surprise, for she knew that standing before her was Lizzie, a girl bearing the same surname as herself, which inevitably indicated that they were both orphans. Even more recently, as strange and unexpected as it may seem, Monica made the mistake of accidentally addressing Luis as Saul. This time, however, she was determined and confident that none other than Lizzie stood before her. Certain traits, such as Lizzie's auburn-colored hair and her unfriendly, if not hostile, attitude toward Monica, were irrefutable proof that the orphan girl in front of her was the same orphan girl. This girl, who had once been given a chance at a new life and a family by Monica, now stood before her, clearly unwilling to remember the past. Monica, despite the obvious distaste in Lizzie's eyes, smiled and turned to her, suggesting that she stop all pretenses and masks that Lizzie might wear in front of others. She expected some sort of reaction from Lizzie, perhaps even calculatingly hoping for a glimmer of recognition or even the slightest show of warmth. But Lizzie's answer was rude and direct, asking Monica the purpose of her visit as if there had never been any connection between them. Monica, caught off guard by such a reception, was confused for a moment. She had not expected such a reaction from Lizzie, for deep down Monica still remembered the little girl she had once tried to help. However, having gathered her thoughts, Monica answered that her appearance here was nothing more than a search for new opportunities for herself, or rather, she was looking for a job as a tutor. Monica, trying to find a way to reconciliation or at least some kind of understanding, pulled a job invitation out of her bag. This document symbolized not only the potential start of a new career for Monica, but also a step towards possible stability in her life. Before Monica could properly explain the significance of this invitation, however, Lizzie snatched it from her hands with a sharp movement. Monica began to tell the story of how she managed to get this invitation, the hope of what it could bring to her life. Lizzie, showing no sign of sympathy or interest, simply tore it up. This came as a real shock to Monica. She was amazed and horrified by such a ruthless act. Her pleas to stop breaking the invitation, were ignored. Lizzie continued her destructive action, as if trying to sever the last thread of connection between them. In a desperate attempt to salvage the situation and regain at least a shred of the opportunity the invitation represented, Monica lunged at Lizzie, trying to wrestle it from her hands. But the struggle ended in failure for Monica. In the chaos of shoving and trying to grab the torn document, she ended up on the floor. This moment, full of despair and powerlessness, became a symbolic depiction of Monica's shattered hopes and dreams, as well as the deep chasm that now separated her and Lizzie. Lizzie declared with unshakable certainty that Monica possessed an art of lying so refined as to be scarcely superior to the most dexterous masters of deception. Continuing her mission of transformation, Lizzie, having discarded the past like old, unwanted clothes, decided to finally rid herself of the last evidence of her previous self. With the utmost contempt, she threw away the remains of the invitation as if they were but useless trash, not worthy of even a moment of her attention. This gesture concealed a deep symbolic meaning. Monica Orphan had to realize that now she was not just Lizzie. She had become Liella, a person with new aspirations and ideals, ready to reject the past and step into the future under a new name. Monica, for her part, found herself faced with the scattered fragments of her future. Picking up the pieces of a letter of recommendation that could have once been the key to her new life, she reflected on the missed opportunities. This letter could have confirmed her identity, been a bridge between past and future, but now, torn apart, it had lost its value and power. At that moment, Monica realized that the decision to give the letter to Miss Newton earlier might have changed the whole course of events. But now all that remained was regret for what had not been done, and the realization that what had been destroyed could not be rebuilt. Liel, on the verge of new beginnings, asked Monica a question with a note of incredulity. She couldn't believe that Monica, without parents or a support in the world, could find refuge in such a prestigious role. The doubt in her voice sounded like a sentence, an accusation that Monica's identity was nothing more than a carefully constructed lie, a pacifier designed to deceive. Monica, faced with such disbelief, seemed to find within herself a source of unexpected resilience and determination. She reminded Liella of her own past, of how she herself, as an orphan, had found her way to a new life, a life among the aristocracy, thanks to the skillfully woven web of fate that Monica had woven for Lizzie. Liel, as if searching for hidden meaning or threat in Monica's words, decided that they hinted at Monica's desire to take her place, to become what she might once have been. But Monica, calmly and confidently, dispelled these fears, saying that her goals were much simpler and uncomplicated. She had come only to find a place as a tutor, trying again to find her place in the world, just as Liella had once found it for herself. Their tense dialogue, like a scene from a play where each actor carefully weighs every word, was suddenly interrupted. Miss Newton entered the room to pick up the letter of recommendation and invitation. Miss Newton, as she entered the room, unwittingly added a new shade to the unfolding drama. With the ease of someone who saw the world through the prism of her beliefs, she assumed that Liella and Monica had already found common ground and bonded in friendship. Her question as to the whereabouts of Martinelle, that in the small, turbulent stream in this quiet pond, sounded almost rhetorical, like a small mystery in the midst of a big story. Liella, without losing her inherent charm and ease, replied with a smile that Martinelle had gotten into a fight with the maid who was throwing away his toys. Miss Newton, surprised to note Martinelle's absence from his room, heard Liella's reply hinting at a small victory for the maid in this eternal struggle between chaos and order. And so, in seemingly casual conversation, Miss Newton suddenly made a request that could change everything. She asked Monica for a letter of recommendation. This request, made with a lightness and humor disguised as a joke about the effects of motherhood on memory, suddenly put Monica in a quandary. Monica, caught off guard by this query, felt a wave of doubt and anxiety. For she knew a secret unknown to Miss Newton, the one that Martinelle was the only child Miss Newton had born into this world. Monica, with visible embarrassment and slight anxiety in her eyes, told of the accident that had caused the letter of recommendation to be damaged. From her bag, she retrieved its scraps, as if trying to put the broken mirror back together, hoping to restore its original look and meaning. Miss Nuto, with a grace and calmness that gave her authority, noticed the bandage on Monica's arm. With curiosity and concern, she decided to clarify what had caused this small but noticeable wound. Liella, finding herself the center of attention, slightly embarrassed and awkwardly searching for words, hurriedly came up with an explanation. She put forward the theory of a nail accident, adding that she was thoughtfully going to bring Monica a bandage to help with her wound. Monica, for her part, tried to lessen the significance of what had happened by waving her hand as a sign that everything was under control. She assured me that she had gotten a Band-Aid and regretted not handing the letter earlier in the interview. Apparently, she felt that this small slip could have had serious consequences. Miss Nudo, after carefully examining the scraps of the letter, could not refrain from remarking that the damage on the document looked suspicious, as if someone had deliberately distorted its content and form. Liella anxiously complied, joining the statement with surprise, and declared that the letter and hand had been damaged before she arrived. The atmosphere in the room was growing more tense by the moment. Miss Nuto, whose eyes did not miss the slightest detail, quickly sensed that there was a lie behind Liella's words. Her penetrating gaze seemed able to read her innermost thoughts. Monica, sensing Miss Nuto's measured and intense gaze, could not keep her composure. In panic, she clenched her fingers on her dress, trying to find some comfort and support in the gesture. That fleeting, barely noticeable reaction was a quiet echo of their shared past, when similar gestures had served as a sign of understanding for both of them during their difficult times at the orphanage. Miss Nudo, without losing her dignity and composure, told Liella bluntly that she could not be deceived. She suggested that the real cause of Monica's injury lay in the events surrounding Lielle's dress. This assumption caught Liella off guard, but at the same time something like joy flashed in her eyes. With collected strength and slight relief in her voice, Liella gave in, admitting that she had indeed tripped over her dress. Monica, for her part, hurt herself trying to prevent Liella from falling, showing her continued willingness to come to the rescue even at the expense of her own well-being. It was said that one day Miss Nuto, being young and full of hope, found herself in an atelier where a magnificent gown was made for her with skill and workmanship, with the hem softly touching the floor with its graceful folds. This dress, a work of art and the embodiment of a dream, caused an unexpected turn in her life when, losing her balance, she fell, but her fate was rewritten the moment when the Duke of Nottingham, like a hero from a fairy tale, caught her in his arms. This random gesture prefigured their future. They married and their love story became legendary. This turn of events explained why Miss Nuto was wary of the possibility of a similar story happening to Lielle again, especially since there might not be anyone around to prevent a fall these days. Deep down, Miss Nudo probably wanted to protect Liella from potential disappointment, because it wasn't every day that a duke was around ready to catch a falling girl. However, Liella, inspired by this romantic story, did not hide her excitement and embarrassment, expressing her desire to experience such an adventure. Her words sounded like a dream of magic, of the belief that history could repeat itself and that every girl might be destined to meet her duke who could catch her as she fell. Liella, suddenly, with a deep sense of responsibility in her voice, divulged that it was because of her actions that the letter had been ruined. At this point, Miss Nudo, still under the impression of her recent conversation, lightly brushed aside these words as a minor misunderstanding, and with a smile turned the conversation to another subject, asking Monica how she was settling into her new home. Monica replied with a nod of her head, confirming that she was quite happy with her new habitat. After this, Miss Nudo, already about to leave the room, did not forget to remind Monica of the coming dinner at which she would be waiting for her. As soon as the door closed behind Miss Nudo, leaving the two of them alone, the atmosphere in the room immediately changed. Miss Nudo, taking a deep breath, turned to Lielle with a question that had long plagued her. She wanted to know who had really caused the destruction of the letter of recommendation. Lielle, gathering her courage, revealed a truth that would have shocked anyone. She told him that Martinelle was the one who had actually torn the letter. This act of Martinelle's not only astonished Miss Nuto, but explained the cause of his recent disappearance, which until that moment had remained a mystery to her. Miss Nuto stated that she would be sure to discuss this point with Martinelle himself, and also noted that she hoped that Liella and Monica would definitely become friends. Liella's fingers clenched on her dress, revealing all the tension that lurked on her soul. During dinner, which enveloped an atmosphere of warmth and family comfort, Miss Nudo, showing concern for the progress of the training and welfare of her charges, addressed an important question to Monica. She announced her decision to invite the doctor the next day, showing her devotion and responsibility for the health of the household, and asked interestedly if Monica would be ready to begin her study sessions with Martinelle as early as tomorrow. At this point, Liella, sensing the importance of the moment and wanting to contribute to the discussion, unexpectedly announced her desire to share information about her brother's preferences. Martinelle, feeling a certain awkwardness from the sudden interception of the initiative, hastened to assure everyone that he was capable of expressing his thoughts and preferences on his own. However, Liella, showing concern for her brother's well-being and wanting him to focus on his food, cleverly shifted her attention back to him, suggesting that Martinelle continue with his dinner while she takes on the role of mediator. Monica, watching this small family intertwining, felt a slight embarrassment. Her mind began to wonder if this interaction between family members was commonplace or unusual for the family. Such reflections added to her feelings of uncertainty in her new surroundings, making her wonder what uncharted aspects of family life she had yet to discover. After the evening examination, Liella took Martinelle's thermometer in her hands, scrutinized its readings, and confidently addressed Monica with an important statement. She emphasized the need to regularly monitor Martinelle's health, pointing out the importance of taking his temperature every night. Leaving Martinelle's room, Liella expressed her desire to have a serious conversation with Monica. After gathering her thoughts, she shared her concerns and inner feelings about their recent deception of Miss Nudo about the letter of recommendation. Liella confessed that her mother had wisdom as well as insight, and that sooner or later she would reveal the truth they had tried so hard to hide. At this point, Monica showed her steadfastness and determination. Despite the seriousness of the situation and the possible consequences, she made it clear that she did not intend to continue weaving a web of deceit, adding new lies to the existing ones. Her indifference to possible exposure and her refusal to make further attempts to deceive Miss Nuto underscored her inner honesty and her willingness to face the possible consequences of her actions head-on, despite the risks and unpredictability of further developments. That afternoon, before the family gathered around the dinner table, Monica had the unique opportunity to get a closer look at the mansion that was now her new home. Miss Olin, chief among the employees, took the role of tour guide, offering Monica a tour of the many halls and corridors of this grand building. During this journey through the house, Monica met various servants who not only shared stories with her about the previous occupants of the mansion, but also left her heart imprinted with the mystery and secrets that shroud the place. The servants, like keepers of history, brought old times to life with stories of the families that once filled these walls with happiness, sadness, and all the emotions that hang in the air of old mansions. Monica found no mention of Liella's adoption in these stories, realizing that it had happened long before their family moved here. Surprisingly, the servants, while sharing stories, did not mention a word about the adoption, as if the fact was unknown to them. This revelation made Monica think. She knew that Liella felt the burden of her past, the fear that the truth about her adoption might become known to those around her. Monica realized how much responsibility rested on the shoulders of Miss Nudo, who also guarded this secret from prying eyes. In the shadow of dark speculation, Liella was certain that Monica, with knowledge of her secret, had obtained her position on the estate through no other means than blackmail. But the truth was far from these thoughts. Monica, meeting Liella's gaze with firmness, declared openly that she had no intention of leaving her position because her job was more than just a means of livelihood. She shared her story, recounting how poverty has been her constant companion since coming of age. Monica's life was a motley ribbon of different occupations and professions, a succession of attempts to find financial stability and independence. All these years, Monica fought for her place in the sun, not letting circumstances break her. However, the blow of fate was participation in the war, which not only devastated her soul, but also left her destitute. Monica spoke of the bitterness of defeat, of how, after the war, she, a warrior, had not been paid her promised wages, depriving her of her last hope of rebuilding a normal life. This was the reason why she could not afford even the modest shelter of a hotel room. Nevertheless, fate finally smiled on her in the form of this job at the manor. Here, within these walls, for the first time in many years, Monica was able to enjoy a rich and delicious dinner, which became for her not just food, but a symbol of new hope and the opportunity to start life with a clean slate. Monica, with a glance through the time-frozen walls of the manor, gently reminded Liella of the little favor she had done her a whole decade ago. It was an act of kindness that at one time had seemed hardly insignificant, but now the weight of it felt very different. Monica, as if seeking to lighten the weight of the past that bound them together, offered Liel a way of reconciliation. She asked Liella to not only take her presence at the manor as a given, but to bow symbolically as a sign of acceptance and willingness to forget what had happened in the past. This gesture was expected to be the key to a new page in their relationship, where past hurts and secrets would be left behind. Liel, as if struck by lightning from the surprise and depth of what was being offered, was lost in her thoughts for a moment. These words of Monica's, so decisive yet carrying the hope of forgiveness and a new beginning, made her look at the situation from a different angle. Humbly, but with an inner sense of relief, Liella rose, confirming her agreement to leave all previous disagreements in the past. Her words, determined not to revisit that topic again, sounded like the promise of a new beginning for both of them. And so, both women, after experiencing that moment of tension and misunderstanding, finally found the strength to separate, leaving behind the heavy weight of the past. This difficult, but at the same time healing conversation became a kind of bridge for them, crossing over which they were able to find mutual understanding and readiness to start again. Suddenly, Monica realized that she had another task ahead of her, unpacking her luggage. Walking over to her suitcase, which had witnessed her many trips and moves, Monica lifted the lid with ease. Suddenly, from the bowels of this keeper of memories, as if escaping from oblivion, some small thing fell out. This small object, which Monica hadn't even thought about lately, seemed to take her back in time, reminding her of the days when it had been more than just a piece of jewelry, Lizzie's long-forgotten brooch. The next morning, when the first rays of sunlight had barely begun to touch the tops of the trees in the estate's garden, Monica, feeling the weight of sleep deprivation, set out to explore her new home. Her steps, measured and unwillingly slow, led her through corridors that seemed to her to be endless labyrinths of the past and present of this house. As she approached the kitchen, she hoped to find solace in the morning ritual of breakfast, which could give her strength and energy for the day ahead. She was met in the kitchen by a maid whose presence added a sense of liveliness and coziness to the room. With a smile and professionalism that would be the envy of many, the maid quickly set about preparing breakfast. This act of care and attention shown to the new resident of the estate was not just a gesture of hospitality for Monica, but a reminder that even in a foreign place, one can find warmth and understanding. Breakfast, prepared with such care, was surely to be the beginning of a new chapter in her life, under the roof of this house, where every corner held stories of the past and secrets that Monica had yet to discover. Suddenly, the clerk called Hans, asking if the man would go to the market, for Monica was anxious to go there, as she would finally be able to afford a sun hat.